So the topic we received was how successful was organized labor in improving the position of workers in the period from 1875 to 1900, analyze the factors that contributed to the level of success achieved. Alright, so basically when looking at this topic, we first had to establish whether or not labor was successful. And we came to the conclusion that labor was in fact not successful in improving the conditions of workers, because looking at document A, it shows that both there wasn't an improvement in both average daily hours and index of daily wages, average daily wages for workers during the period of 1875 to 1900, and this really shows that labor wasn't successful. Alright, so our first point in response to this topic was basically that disunion within labor groups caused labor unions to not be successful in improving conditions. And so basically this point is showing that there was no unity within labor groups, and that made the organized labor movement much less successful. For example, like most of the labor unions didn't accept women and black men and women, so that really led to a lot less unity within groups, because there were workers that weren't included in these unions, and it really undermined the power of the labor movement. And another factor in this point was that most people in these unions were white males and were from various European backgrounds. So we saw a lot of maybe Germans, Irish, Polish, so all these different European backgrounds, and all these people didn't really share one cultural heritage, and so it was hard to get all these people together to fight for something when they were different people. And document G really reflects this, because it shows that the people that made up labor unions were from various European backgrounds. Alright, the second way we respond to this is by saying that there was a general negative view of organized labor during this time period, and this really undermined many of the labor movements. For example, one aspect of this was that the federal government was relatively hostile towards organized labor, and in the Supreme Court case, in re Debs, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government had power to regulate interstate commerce, and it was their duty to remove any obstruction in the railways, and this meant removing the strikes in the railways. So the Supreme Court sided with business and against organized labor. And also many Americans saw organized labor as a quite radical movement, because it was often very violent, many of the strikes, and there was also this label that organized labor was in fact socialist, and that didn't bode well with many people, and that's why there was a general negative consensus towards organized labor. And the third way we'd respond to this question is by saying that basically the labor movement wasn't successful because most of the strikes and protests were unsuccessful because of violence, because they all ended in violence. And we see that many of the strikes, including the Great Railroad Strike, the Haymarket riot, Homestead Strike, Pullman Strike, all involved some sort of violence where people were killed, where you saw protesters throwing bombs at police and police shooting at protesters. And so really this undermined the movement as a whole, because people saw the movement as radical, and they didn't really support the labor movement because it was just too violent. And to the point where federal troops had to be called in to suppress protesters, it was really hard for people to side with organized labor.